Education 1030 students. I hope everyone had a great week last week. We just finished our second exam. I can't believe it. Time is flying by. We have about 6 weeks left of school, and then we have our final exam. So I can't believe how fast time is going by. But, anyways, I hope everyone had a great week last week. We're going to jump in to this week with Module 6. So, this is really important because this is taking off where taking on where we left off last time when we were talking about what kind of learner you were. And then we talked about how do we do outlines so we can organize our information, right? So now we're talking about, well, I want to prepare for the test, but I need to be able to study and kind of memorize these things. That way I could use them during the test or application. So it's really about how you are studying. And remember, we have to take into account what kind of learner we are as well. So we look at your preferred learning style. And we looked at like different note taking strategies, but now we're really going to look at, well, how do we increase our comprehension, and we do that with our memory, but also how am I going to effectively study and prepare for tests? So that's really the focus of Module 6. So you will have an assignment, you will have your Module 6 quiz, and then you will also have your reading organizer, which is optional. Remember, you can turn those in during exam week. And then you have your homework, which is going to be completing a worksheet on how you study. So it's going to use the textbook information, and you're going to apply it to some questions. So I'll show you what those will look like. So for chapter 6 homework, aside from doing the quiz, you will kind of answer these text-based responses under two sections. So in the book, if you look, there are three main ideas underneath the chapter outline on the first page. And I'll show you in just a minute when I'm talking about that, so you'll know where to go and look. But we're going to look specifically at studying, and then we're also going to connect it to college success, because if you remember back in the first module, the first week of school, I said that a lot of things that we do, these assignments, we're going to reflect back on it because we want to relate it to your college experience. That's why we have the course called College Experience. So whenever a teacher or instructor is asking you for text-based responses, it means that you're going to have to use your textbook, almost like a citation, right? Citing where you found it in the textbook. You're going to have to go in and dig in your textbook to be able to answer the questions. So the first section, studying, is really going to talk about how do you prepare for tests to make it successful when you're studying, looking at your environment. So, really looking at those things and also looking at study strategies that are beneficial for you. And then going back to your learning preferences and strategies, how can you use all those things to help you study for tests and exams? And then the next one is college success. So, thinking about this semester of what courses you find most difficult, because you're over halfway through the semester now. So, you have a pretty good feel for all your courses. Which one is the most difficult? When you do have tests in there or exams, do you experience test anxiety, whether it's in person or online, and why do you think that is? And then also thinking about what kind of strategies can you manage with test anxiety. All these questions are really going to be found inside your textbook. So when you answer these questions, you could complete your answers inside of this document, which I prefer. So it doesn't necessarily have to be in paragraph form, right? But I do want complete thoughts, and I want the information to come specifically from the textbook. So all these questions, you will get the answers in chapter 6. So we will be reading chapter 6, and that's where the answers will be. Okay, so let's go ahead. You also have, I'm going to have a PowerPoint I'm going to put up here for you. I always try to give you the slides that go along, that will help you, especially with studying. But I wanted to show you what I was talking about when I said you can find the main ideas at the beginning of the chapters. So this is the embedded version. You can also, download it as a PDF. But if you get in the very beginning of chapter 6 or any chapter in our text, you're going to see an outline. And that outline is going to give you the three main ideas or the main focus of the chapter. So you'll see here We're really diving into memory and how that all plays a key part into studying and comprehension. We're looking at studying to actively prepare and then test taking. What do you do when you're actually taking the test? And also going a little bit deeper with test anxiety. So that's how you will look at when I say the main ideas or what I want you to draw out of the text. So I want to go ahead and spend a few minutes talking about. I talked to you about your quiz, which is your assignment this week. It will be due on Thursday. Okay, so make sure that you have it done by Thursday, October 30th. It will close, and your quiz will close as well. So I wanted to talk a little bit about a few things inside of our PowerPoint. And the reason being is because I wanted to explain a few things a little bit deeper. And you will see this in your textbook chapters where I'm getting this, but I'm going to kind of pick the slides to highlight a few things. So when we're talking about the differences in long term and short term, it's important for you to be able to break down the different types of memory. Okay, so we have long term memory, we have short term memory, and then we have what we call working memory. And I wanted to kind of talk a little bit about this. Now, this is all going to be in your textbook under the first idea of 6.1. Okay. And what we're looking at is the differences between the three. So, with memory, there's actually three basic steps that we go through if we're trying to remember ideas or images. So, we have encoding, storage, and retrieval. And I want to talk first about encoding. So, encoding is important because encoding is how we first perceive the information, right? So, this is what we're taking in through our senses. And so, example, if you smell a lovely perfume, right? Um, uh, Maybe something is connected to a smell. A lot of times, if you smell something like your favorite dish that your mom makes, when you smell that dish, it reminds me of your mom and that favorite dish that she makes. So remember, that's what encoding is. That's the very first step. So we think of our brains, right? We think of memory as a big storage tank. And the first process and the step that we have to go through is encoding, which is taking it in. Now, our brains will label or encode this, and it specifically puts it right away in the short term memory. Okay, so this has to be stored in the short term memory. That's where the storage comes in. This is short term. Now, we don't remember a lot of stuff, we will forget. And what we have to do is when it's in the storage tank and we're storing it in our short term memory, it could only be there for a short amount of time unless we do something with it. We want to be able to retrieve it later. So, in order to retrieve it, retrieval happens in long term memory, but you have to do stuff with it first. Okay. So, short term memory, like we said, is it helps us remember where we set our keys, right? Or where you left your project off for that day. So, it's very useful. Sometimes you'll get a like advertising jingle stuck in your head. Again, that's an example. It's there to help us remember things and retrieve it pretty easily, right? You can recall things. And there is a psychologist, Professor George Miller, and he claims that humans can recall about 5 to 9 bits of information in our short term memory at any given time. Okay, so there's always some things, we were like, well, telephone numbers. Back in the day, because I'm a little bit older, I'm in my mid 40s, older than some of you. Um, Back in the day, we didn't have cell phones. So you had what we called landlines, where you could not take the phone, out of the house. I mean, it wasn't like your cell phone, it wasn't mobile, right? So we had to remember people's phone numbers, or you had to have a book, a phone number book that you kept people's phone numbers in. And that's why that lucky numbers is 7, right? Um, that's how we're able to retrieve that information. But there's a lot of factors that help us to be able to retrieve the information. Because remember, I said everything is in the short-term memory storage. But we have to make connections to this information that we get, subject matter that we're not familiar with. Those kind of ideas might go away in our storage area if we don't do something with it. Now, how interested in your topic that you're learning about is key because we can't remember everything. So we have to make sure that we work hard so we know what we're doing. And to be able to retrieve it later. We want it to go into our long term memory bank, right? So, long term is things you can recall from the past, right? Like maybe uh, the smell of the cafeteria in elementary school, or how to pop a wheelie on your bike. Like your long term memory is long term storage. It can be things from weeks, months, even years ago. So a lot of times, whenever we're remembering things long term, it's easier because we have connections to those memories. So it's easy for us to retrieve them, right? We also have something called working memory. And working memory is going to be where you are going to have to do things with it. A lot of times, working memory is really breaking down the different types of things that we've got so we can recall these ideas. Okay. There's a lot of information on memory and brain research. So if this interests you, please go and work. I mean, we could have a whole class just on brain research, right? And that still wouldn't be enough. So I really want you to look at the chapter, but I also want you to know that whenever you are learning things, lots of neurons are firing in your brain, right? So we use our skills and knowledge and the content to try to make us remember these sorts of types of things. Okay. Now, things do affect your memory, like if you're not getting enough sleep, you are cramming a lot. Obviously, when you're cramming, you're not doing purposeful things with the items you're getting. So it's really no connection there. You're probably cramming because you're not interested. You just want to pass the test to pass the class. So really, you're not going to remember it after class is over, which is difficult when you are going to start getting into your major courses for your degree works. Okay. So when you are studying, we want to make sure that we memorize the information in a most effective way so it can be put into our long term memory bank. Okay. So another thing I wanted to kind of walk you through real quick is some study strategies. Okay. And study strategies, um, there's a few. So it's in 6.2, excuse me, 6.2 section. So when you're preparing to study, there are some strategies that are going to help you, right? Here's the three that your book has come up with. The first one's called mnemonics. Now, mnemonics is a really good way to remember information, like it's using reminders. So here's one way that you can remember a compass: news, north, east, west, south. Okay. Um, or if you are saying that you are trying to do the planets, about their location around the sun, right? You would say, my very eager mother just served us 9 pizzas. Okay. So that would be the different planets that you'd list out, right? About their order away from the sun. So really, when you're using mnemonics, or the colors, right? Roy G. Biv, the colors red, orange, yellow, green, blue, indigo, violet. So your book gives you some examples of what mnemonics are. It's really good because if you have complex information, it's a good way for you to kind of put it in your brain in a way that makes sense where you can understand it. Another one is concept association, which is where, if you're reading something, we have to put it in a summary. But how we do that is you really need to analyze the information first. So if you're learning about Martin Luther King's Jr.'s letter from Birmingham jail and you were studying it and you're going to have a test on it, it's going to be really hard. There's a lot of information, there's a lot in it. But what you could do is try to think of a way that you can make connections, right? So, what I mean by that is you can include notes from the summary of your analysis. Like once you study it, you go over it in class, what are you learning about it in your own words. You could even include research you find from websites about it, right? And then you can um, take these elements and the significance behind the letter and then try to find the best idea and way to access the information. So really trying to understand it in a deeper way is really concept association. And then the last one is really ideas clusters, and this is going to be a way to help your brain recall the information. So here's an example the textbook gives you. For example, Andrea is avid knitter and remembers how to create complicated stitches by associating them with nursery rhymes she read as a child. Okay, so a delicate stitch that takes a lot of concentration, um, she she knows that this is hard, right? And it's hiding. The stitches are hiding, so she remembers Red Riding Hood. That helps her recall this types of stitching. So it's really all about what study strategies work to you now work for you, excuse me. And remember, you also have to think about what kind of learner you are. So there are 3 effective study strategies. Okay, so this is some. These are some other things, and these are called spacing, interleaving, and practice testing. Okay, so we always say don't cram. Okay, spacing, it is how it's when you study. Okay, so we say don't cram, you study over amount of certain days and you're taking breaks in between. That's called spacing, where you're not cramming in one whole session and doing it the night before. So spacing is very effective. The other one is interleaving, and this is really where you're not studying just one content or one chapter or topic or a unit. You're mixing all of it up together. Okay. So it has to do with how you are, like what you're studying. So, an example of this interleaving type of study would be if you had a midterm or a final, because it's not going to be over only one chapter or one unit, it's over multiple things. So, interleaving is really the best way to study when you have a lot of material. And then the third is practice testing. So this is something you should do. Now, sometimes your textbooks will, or your courses will allow you to have like practice tests like Kahoot games or Quizlets. Take advantage of that, but also you could even make up your own practice testing, which could help you. Okay. Now, in your book, Table 6.1, it gives you example of spacing. So if you're looking at the textbook, for spacing on table 6.1, it will show you a calendar for 7 days, and it will show you maybe on Sunday you study for 1 hour. Then on Tuesday you study for 30 minutes. And then on Wednesday in the morning you study for 1 hour, and then the evening at bedtime you'll study for 1 hour. And then Thursday you'll study for 3 hours in the morning, and then that night you'll study for 90 minutes. So what you're doing essentially is you're just spacing out the days that you're studying. Um, and interleaving on table 6.2, it gives you an example where it shows you on the table 6.2 that they're responsible for 3 chapters and they have a big test on 3 chapters, which is a lot of material. But you'll see in the table it's showing you how to study multiple things. Okay. And then when you, in the last one, practice testing, your book talks about like some flashcards or using Quizlet. These things are really good for retrieving information and helping you store them in the long-term memory bank. So what you do with your time and how you study and what kind of learner you are all need to be taken into account. Now, figure 6.9 in your textbook is really good because it's listing um, study habits for you. So you'll see here, and a lot of these we went over in class and that we know, but it's just a good reminder for us to look at your study habits. And this list is a good chance in time for you to reflect back on your own study habits and how you prepare for tests. Okay. So those are the things I mainly wanted to focus on with you. The other part, the last part of um, the last part is going to be in your textbook about test anxiety, right? And how you could use strategies in the book to help you, which, if I'm not mistaken, is going to be a question for you on your homework assignment. So, anyways, I just wanted to kind of walk you through a few things, what you need to focus on. So, again, for your homework, it's due on the 30th of October, and you will have your Module 6 quiz, and then you will have your Word document where you're using your textbook to answer these questions. Now, remember, you don't have to cite it with APA but I do want you to tell me what page and what table you found it at. That way I know that it came from the book. Now, if you are using the links to the textbook here, okay, um, tell me what section it's at. And it will still tell you figures, it will still tell you the numbers of the tables, but tell me the section, like it'll say textbook, test taking. You would put, I got it out of this section. It's just easier if you are doing text-based responses to be specific where you found it when I'm grading it. That's all. I hope I do want to mention one more thing. I do hope you have a great week, but I also wanted to tell you the next video I'm going to be doing is going to be talking about your job readiness module, right? So we need to start working on our personal mission statement, our resume, cover letter, and then I'm also going to talk you through mock interviews. So there will be a separate video that is going to be just on our career readiness portfolio and the things that I want you to start working on, and that will be coming maybe next week. Okay, so be on the lookout for that. All right, have a great week. Until next time, take care.